Today on the show, I watched Desperate Measures with Michael Keaton and Shadow Conspiracy with Charlie Sheen, and they were straight up trash. Alright everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. Thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And as I mentioned, I've got some movies to talk about. I really don't know how much warm-up I really want to do, but I'm going to do a little bit just to be safe. There have been a couple of times in my life that I've had someone talk to me like I was the dumbest fucking person alive, and it was such a humiliating experience, and it wasn't even like it was necessarily their intention. It was just they assumed that I was dumb, and I guess that's probably a fair thing to assume about somebody, based on what you see in the world. It's just the way it is, okay? So the first time that I'm thinking of it was a friend of mine that I used to work with, and her and I never really had problems with each other, and I posted a status on Facebook, and it was basically something to the effect of, having watched the movie Grease, I was talking about how the movie was confusing to me, aside from the whole breaking out into song and dance at random throughout the movie thing. I noticed that at the very end of the movie, Danny Zuko and Sandy, they get into that car together and they fly off into the sunset. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't even remember if they were really riding off into the sunset, but it was just, they were flying away. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, this car can fly. What the fuck? And when I posted this, having made mention of the fact that, they broke out into song and dance, one of my friends commented and said, well, the reason they break out into song and dance is because it's a musical. And I was like, Are you fucking serious right now? You're actually you don't realize that I'm joking about them breaking out into song and dance? Yes, I realize that they break out into song and dance in fucking musicals, and that's what it is. Holy shit, it was just a joke. It's a little unusual to see people breaking out into song and dance. Even if you know it's a musical, it's still like this very jarring experience in my opinion. But so there was that, and I commented back to her and I said, gee, thanks. I didn't realize that Grease was a musical. I really appreciate your insight. And she, I think realized that maybe she had been a little ridiculous. And so the other time was, okay, so I work, and I'm not going to go into what I do for a job because it's not a good look for me to have, a bunch of shit going on with talking about my work and where I work and who I work for and all that stuff. But so suffice it to say, I work in a factory, and, when people are building things in this factory, they have a manifest on the for the thing that they're building, so they know what they need to, what parts they need to put on the thing that they're building. And I was trying to look at one of the manifests to see what it was that they were building, and she was like, oh yeah, you look at that to see what the model is, and then these are the different codes for the different options. I'm like, yes, thank you, I appreciate that. I fucking know that that's what that is. Did you think I was trying to figure out what letters were, too? Like, what are these weird symbols, fuck off. Like, god damn it. It's just so aggravating when it's like, you haven't really earned being treated like you're stupid to somebody, and all of a sudden they're just treating you like that. So I guess I will just get into those movies right now because I'm terrified, even though, for both of these movies, I had a really hard time keeping my attention focused on the movie. You know, I was trying to take notes while I was watching them, and I didn't want to miss anything, but I fear that I did indeed miss some things when I was taking the notes. So it's like I'd try and pause it. It wasn't working out super good. So I did what I could and just went with it. And I accepted that was how it was going to be. The first movie we have is called Desperate Measures. It came out on January 30th, 1998. It was directed by someone named Schroeder, something like that. Barbet Schroeder is what I'm reading here. So I'm sorry if I have a hard to pronounce last name, so I really try and get these things right. But I just wanted to give it a shot on a couple. But Barbet Schroeder, it's probably the last time I'll mention his name anyway. So he's made a few movies that I've vaguely heard of before, but nothing really standing out in my mind as anything special. He made the movie Single White Female, Kiss of Death, and Murder by Numbers, among others, but those were the ones that really stood out as ones that seemed like they were his bigger movies. So he was the director of this movie, and then the writer of this movie was actually the author of the book this movie is based on, I guess. And I actually had heard of, he wrote the book Kiss the Girls, which ended up getting made into a movie with, I think Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd, maybe. It was a pretty solid movie. It wasn't half bad. And he also made Walking Tall, which I think they adapted into a movie, and it was, I think The Rock was in it, or Dwayne Johnson, if you want to, refer to him by name, which I think he prefers now. Actually, shockingly, the soundtrack, or I should say the score of this movie was made by a guy named Trevor Jones, and I had actually heard of a lot of the movies that he had done. I can't say that I particularly remember the score from those movies, but he did Excalibur, Runaway Train, The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Mississippi Burning, The Last of the Mohicans, and In the Name of the Father. Now, the last two star Daniel Day-Lewis, and I've seen both of those. It's been a while. I liked The Last of the Mohicans. That was a solid movie. And then In the Name of the Father was just super fucking depressing. Like, my God, I get it. It's a true story, but not every true story needs to be made into a fucking movie or a book or something, I mean, sometimes things can just happen, and that's where we need to draw the line. I mean, that's how I feel about it. You say what you want about it. The lead actor in this movie is Michael Keaton himself. He plays a man named Peter J. McCabe, who is actually supposed to be one of these, Ted Bundy types, like he's a super crazy killer man, and he's murdered all these people, and that put him in prison, and then he murdered a bunch of people when he was in prison, and so he's in like maximum security, super high lockdown type stuff. So Michael Keaton, obviously, he was Batman. He's my favorite Batman. I'll just say that right now. He was in the 1989 Tim Burton movie, as well as the Tim Burton follow-up Batman Returns. And he was in Night Shift, Mr. Mom, Johnny Dangerously, which is an underrated one. I really like Johnny Dangerously. It's just a little ridiculous, and I think it's a neat idea for a movie. It's different. I don't know. I've never seen a movie like it. He was in Beetlejuice, which honestly, like, if it's non-Batman Tim Burton, I'm usually not a big fan, and this is no exception. Batman is it for me. It's like Beetlejuice, nah, I'm good. I'm really good. He was in Clean and Sober, The Paper, which I watched fairly recently, and it was a pretty mediocre movie. It didn't stand out at all for me. He was in Multiplicity with Andy McDowell. That's one where he like clones himself and is trying to get, more time in his life and stuff. And so he starts cloning himself to have the other versions of him do other things. And it ends up being I assume pretty shitty. I haven't seen it since I was a little kid, so I can't really say that I remember whether or not it was any good, but I don't feel like it would stand the test of time if I went to revisit, so I'm just not going to do that to myself. He was in Jackie Brown, which is a Quentin Tarantino movie. He was also in Jack Frost, which will come back later. I I can't wait for that moment because it's such an awesome connection. He was also in a movie called Birdman, which I think he won Best Actor for. And I don't know if that movie won Best Picture, but I gotta say, I fucking hated Birdman. I didn't like the style it was in, and I didn't like the score, like the instrumentation. It sounded like a jazz band was like following Michael Keaton around in this fucking movie. I just did not like it. He played Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. He was in The Trial of the Chicago 7, which was a pretty solid movie. It's like a courtroom drama type, but it was like a true story. So as far as Michael Keaton is concerned, he's had his ups and downs, but I love him. He's one of my favorites, He's just great. Alongside him, we have Andy Garcia, who plays Detective Frank Connor. And Andy Garcia was in The Untouchables. He was in Stand and Deliver, Internal Affairs, The Godfather Part 3, which I never actually finished because it was such a disappointment. I was just so bored the entire fucking time I was watching that movie. And then he was in Ocean's 11. I think he was in the other Ocean's movies, but at least, the original 3. And he didn't, I don't remember if he came back because I've only ever seen Ocean's 12 and Ocean's 13 like once a piece. And it was just that second fucking Ocean's 12, or that Ocean's 12 movie where it was like they had Julia Roberts' character play Julia Roberts, and it was so stupid. It was just like, what is this plot? Like, are you fucking kidding me? So anyway, we got Marcia Gay Harden, who plays the doctor in this movie, and you've probably, if you don't know her name, you've probably seen her face. She has like super resting bitch face, like really bad. She was in Miller's Crossing, Meet Joe Black, Space Cowboys, Mystic River, Mona Lisa's Smile, and I remember her best from The Mist, which was a pretty solid horror movie, like a good I think it was Stephen King, and it was pretty good, actually. I liked it. It kind of had a bummer of an ending, I think, if I remember right, but it was a good movie. Also in this movie, apparently also in every other fucking movie ever made, is Brian Cox, who I always remember as being, I think his name's O'Hagan. He's the police chief in Super Troopers, and he's great in that movie. He plays a police officer in this movie. His name is Captain Jeremiah Cassidy. Okay, he was in Manhunter, which was a movie that had like the character Hannibal Lecter in it, and he was Hannibal Lecter, which I always find interesting. Like, I can't even picture him playing that part. It would be so different from Anthony Hopkins as far as I can tell. He was also in Iron Will, which is a solid movie. I think it's a Disney picture, but it's a good movie. It's got, the once great Kevin Spacey in it. But anyway, it's a solid movie. It's about the Iditarod, the dog sled race in Alaska. And it's a really good one. It tugs on the old heartstrings and stuff. He's also in Rob Roy, Braveheart, Chain Reaction, The Glimmer Man, which is a Steven Seagal movie. He was in The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss the Girls, which is another book by this author. He was in Super Troopers, as I mentioned. He was in The Rookie. He was in The Ring, Adaptation, X2, X-Men United, and Zodiac. Honestly, he's got a pretty fucking solid resume. I mean, aside from that Steven Seagal movie, I would say I've got no complaints about Brian Cox. The guy is fucking great. I mean, I wish he was in more shit, and I mean, he's already in fucking everything. So this movie didn't really have a lot of casting notes or much for bonus trivia type items, honestly. So it's going to be a pretty plot-centric type discussion here. The plot synopsis. So IMDb, this is the plot synopsis that they had. It is: Frank Connor is an honest police officer who desperately needs to save his son's life. However, after losing all hope, he finds out that criminal Peter McCabe in jail is his only savior. So I took a shot at writing what is the actual plot synopsis of this movie, and I said it was: Frank Connor's son is just dying to find a bone marrow donor. Could killer Peter McCabe fit the bill? I know it's not a traditional plot synopsis and it's probably in bad taste, but this movie is too ridiculous. Like, if you're going to take this movie seriously, get the fuck out of here. Like, just fuck off. Because, I mean, honestly, it's on Tubi, which is a free ad-based movie streaming service that I use a lot for especially bad movies. And that's just what this is. This is a bad movie. I mean, I'm talking about bad movies today in case you didn't pick up on that. And I mean, honestly, it's tough because I'm trying to find these movies that are not ones that have been covered before, and they're not ones that, you know, I've heard on other podcasts and stuff. And some of them I'll go to that well, you know, I'll cover a movie. Like, for instance, I think there are some movies that didn't get great episodes out of like We Hate Movies or How Did This Get Made, and so I want to go more in depth with my mocking of them. Anyway, so that's the basic plot synopsis. You know, Andy Garcia is looking for a donor to save his kid's life, and the only possible donor is this Michael Keaton character that is just this raving lunatic fucking criminal, and that's what we're led to believe. At the beginning of this movie, we get, you know, the like studio title cards and stuff, and Mandalay Entertainment always has, it's like they show a jungle. It's like live footage of a jungle, and all of a sudden this fucking tiger comes walking out of the jungle, and I'm like, what is this? And then all of a sudden it says Mandalay Entertainment, and I'm like, God damn it. Why did I think that this movie was going to start in the fucking jungle? Anyway, this whole intro, we get these credits that they're kind of like transposing these credits onto things, you know, they're angling them with, you know, doors and floors and hallways and stuff, and it's just, it's okay. I can deal with it. It's not my biggest gripe of this movie, so I'll let it have a pass on that. And I noticed that this came out in 98, and Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, came out in 2002, and this movie and, you know, this movie Desperate Measures and Spider-Man have very similar sounding opening sequences, but like Danny Elfman did Spider-Man, so I don't know, maybe it's just a coinky-dink, because I mean, I would not be surprised if nobody that worked on Spider-Man had seen or heard of this movie. Okay, so when the movie starts, you don't really know what's going on, obviously, and you're watching these people break into a computer. You know, they're in this highly secure building, and they break into this computer, and they're doing these POV shots where, you know, it's like you're seeing it from their point of view, but it's like they're doing it at like quarter speed, so it's like you're watching it in slow-mo, you know, and it's not a good look. It's not, I mean, don't do the POV if you can help it, honestly, unless there's something that you have to capture with POV to really help tell the story. Don't do it. Movies have tried to do this before, and it does not work out well. I mean, it does not look good on, you know, as a basic concept in a movie. Basically what it turns out is like Andy Garcia and an accomplice of his of some sort is breaking in to find a donor, and they find out that this Peter McCabe, the serial killer, is a viable donor, right? And so the next thing we know, Andy Garcia is in this car with Brian Cox, and, you know, Brian Cox is a police officer, and so is Andy Garcia. And Brian Cox is looking through this serial killer's file, and he is looking at picture after picture of, you know, people that were murdered in gruesome ways and stuff. And he gets like so beside himself with disgust that he has to just throw down these fucking pictures. And I'm like, look, if you are, I mean, I know some people who have worked corrections before. I know for sure one, but I think I know one other. And every time anything gets mentioned about something that's like particularly gruesome like this, that friend of mine always says like he's so desensitized to the whole notion of, you know, having something that's like particularly awful or whatever. And I just don't believe that if Brian Cox is like a captain, I don't believe that he is that disturbed by anything he's gonna see in these files. I just don't fucking buy it. But anyway, every time we see Michael Keaton, he's kind of doing like a little bit of a voice, like an accent or something. And he's really overselling the I'm a fucking lunatic prisoner, kind of thing. And it's like Garcia goes and visits him and all of it is, and like, it's at this point in the movie that you figure out that what they're doing is trying to get, you don't know until he starts, Andy Garcia starts talking to Michael Keaton. That's when you find out that he's looking for a bone marrow donor. And it's just like, holy shit. So that's what this is going to be. They're going to try and, get a transfusion or whatever you want to call it from Michael Keaton. And he's this dangerous criminal. Okay. And all I can think the entire time that I'm watching this movie is, how fucking likely is it that Michael Keaton is literally the only person in the world that could do this, and they couldn't find anybody else at all, It seems pretty iffy. So there's only one part of this movie that I remember from before, and I don't remember what context I saw, because I don't think I saw the whole movie, and I don't think I saw the beginning of the movie, but it was like, there's a scene where it's like with Michael Keaton, he's trying to scare someone, so I'll get back to that in a second. And so we see Andy Garcia visit his son, and, when he first goes to interact with him, he like reaches in like he's going for a fucking open mouth kiss on this kid, and then he just like kisses his cheek or whatever, but he pulls out this gift bag and goes to hand it to his son, and his son's like, "Thanks, Dad." And it's like, okay, like, first off, I mean, I don't give a shit. You can be thankful, but like, you thank somebody for something after you've seen what it is. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm just being a douche nozzle. I don't know. I'm just saying, what am I thanking you for if I don't even know what the thing is that you got me? Like, what am I getting out of it? Like, what am I getting from you that I'm thanking you for? Why would I say thank you ahead of time? So I gotta say, this kid, I was really surprised, because this movie was not rated very well on IMDb. And, I was just, everything I looked at, it looked like it was going to be all bad all across the board, but it actually had a lot of good people in it. And this kid actually is like a decent child actor. Like, I was pretty pleased with his performance. I don't get, because, like, once they decide that Keaton is going to be the bone marrow donor for this kid, he says he wants to meet the kid, and they like actually go along with this. You know what I mean? It's one thing if it's like, yeah, you're Andy Garcia, you really want somebody to be a donor for your kid, you've got to find them. But the problem is, it's not in Andy Garcia's hands at that point. Like, somebody above him would have to say, you want your son to see who in this prison? I don't fucking think so. I mean, it doesn't make any logical sense to me that they would actually allow that to happen. I mean, all of the tension in this movie, it's extremely forced. There's a lot of, I don't even know if I want to say overacting, but it's like manufactured tension, because it's like, oh, well, what could be more tense than a 9-year-old visiting a serial killer in prison? Get the fuck out of here. And I kind of came to this conclusion at this point in this movie that I'm like, everything else would be fine if this writing wasn't so bad in this movie. It is like lazy writing. It's just, oh my God, it makes me so unhappy just thinking about it. And there's a moment where Andy Garcia and the son character are talking to each other, and the son asks his dad, if he gets this bone marrow from this serial killer, is he gonna turn into a serial killer? And I'm like, you know what? That actually sounds like a less bad, but still very bad movie idea that he's pitching right now, that I would actually rather be watching right now. So you start to see, after the deal is done, they decide Michael Keaton is going to donate this bone marrow, and, everybody's going to let it happen for some reason. And Michael Keaton, you like see his plot, like what he's trying to orchestrate, because obviously this is not going to be a fucking movie if Michael Keaton doesn't escape. You know what I mean? So he's got to figure out a way to escape. So he gets this, I don't remember what the hell it was called, but it was some kind of a substance that is used to counteract drugs, and he gets it from somebody inside the prison, and that prisoner happens to be Tracy Walter, who played Bob the Goon in Batman from 1989, which also starred, you guessed it, Michael Keaton. And Michael Keaton, by the way, because I was so starved for trivia, I thought I would share that Michael Keaton's real name is Michael Douglas, but obviously that name was taken when he went to get his Screen Actors Guild, his SAG card. So he decided he liked Diane Keaton's last name, and he decided to go with Michael Keaton, and that's it. And if you follow him on Instagram, his handle is Michael Keaton Douglas. So, there's that. I feel like if I went by Michael Keaton for that long in my life, like, I might be tempted to just change my name to Michael Keaton, but what can you do? There's a guy that pops up in this movie at one point, and he's got a mustache, and I kept thinking, I'm like, well, I definitely know that guy, but where the fuck do I know that guy from? And as soon as I looked him up, it was like, oh, he's Tom Smokowski from Office Space, and he's the guy that gets in the car accident backing out of his driveway, and is wearing like one of those metal halo things when you have like severe spine damage and shit. So yeah, it was nice to see him in this movie. I would say, as you see Keaton's plan escalating, he like swallows a key, and at like one point he breaks his thumb, and I don't even remember how that comes back to, come into play later, but he breaks his thumb by like tying a string to it. It's like he ties a string from his shoe to his thumb and then slams his thumb down on the side of the bed. I don't know. He fucking breaks his thumb. That's all you really need to know. But he is really going all in on the crazy. And none of the Keaton plan to me is suspenseful. It's like initially I was thinking, what's he doing? And I'm like, oh wait, there's nothing else he could possibly be doing other than fucking trying to escape from this goddamn prison while he's, or I should say, escape from the hospital while he's giving the transfusion. And so when they're taking him to the hospital to do this procedure, there are two German Shepherd police dogs, and he hisses at them, and they like squeal in terror at Michael Keaton. And I'm like, no, I'm calling bullshit. I cannot accept this. There is no fucking way a man hissing at these dogs. They're highly trained dogs. You know what I mean? That I don't fucking believe it for a minute. I'm thinking at this point in this movie, it's like, am I really to believe that Michael Keaton, with all these people around guarding him, knowing that he's in here, that he's going to, break out with all these people around here? Is that what I'm supposed to believe? And they have to unshackle him to do the procedure. And then it's like, of course, they unshackle him, and he doesn't like try and break out right away. It's like he's got this plan where he's going to lull them into a false sense of security because, they're going to give him drugs to knock him out, because that's really what they want to do. They want to like get him put under so that he can't, do anything to them. And they go to do that. And of course, he's taken this, other drug to counteract the anesthesia. And it's like, they think he's falling asleep, and, lo and behold, that's when he breaks out. But like by the time he breaks out, they've like lowered the amount of security in the room to like one or two people. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. There's no fucking way that this is the way it would go down. And I realized also, because they keep flashing between what's happening with Michael Keaton and what's happening with Andy Garcia, and they show the kid, and the kid, it turns out he is actually the same kid that was in this movie called Jack Frost from like right around the same time that this movie came out. And wouldn't you know it, the guy who played his dad, none other than Michael Keaton, who is the Jack Frost. Yeah, that's right. Connective tissue, motherfucker. Okay, so I would say there honestly are quite a few familiar faces in this movie, like, especially given that, like, I would say there are a lot of actors I really like in this movie. Andy Garcia, I can take it or him or leave him. I don't really give a shit about Andy Garcia, but other than him, like I like a lot of these people. And all I could think, okay, so he's breaking out, and I'm like, yeah, he would have fucking had like 10 officers in there with him if he had his handcuffs taken off. That's a given. I don't give a shit if he was going under and all that shit. Nope, doesn't fucking matter. This is like, I don't know, 30 minutes in or a little more maybe. And all I can think at this point is, I'm like, well, they're not going to catch him this fucking fast. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I also had to remark on, Tubi, Tubi, this streaming service had fucking stupendous picture. Like, usually I don't notice that kind of thing, but like, if I watch things on Hoopla, which is the public library driven service, it's not always so great, like the picture is usually pretty shitty actually. But Tubi, I was very pleased. And you have to deal with ads, but then you just take your bathroom breaks then instead of pausing it. I mean, that's just like the olden days. I said at this point there is an hour left in the movie, so this is right after Keaton has broken out and he's doing whatever. And all I could think, with this much to go, with as dumb as the setup for this movie has been, all I can think is, do you think that Michael Keaton and Andy Garcia look back on this movie with anything but disdain? Like, are they proud of this movie? I don't think so. So there's like there's a couple of standoffs in this movie, obviously. I mean, it's a hostage situation or not even a hostage situation so much, but like, it's this escaped convict and he's trying to get out of this place and all that stuff. And at one point, Michael Keaton is holding up Marcia Gay Harden with a scalpel, and Andy Garcia has him at gunpoint, and basically he coerces Garcia to put the gun down. It's like, he gets away, and Brian Cox is just furious because basically at this point they established that if Keaton dies, his bone marrow is no good. I don't know how true that is, but I assume it might be accurate. So, he escapes, and Brian Cox says to Andy Garcia, he's like, how many people are going to have to die tonight so that kid of yours can live? And it sounds so bad. Like, it sounds like, nobody's actually going to like, you could phrase it so differently, you know what I mean? But that's what he says. And I still can't get a finger on what fucking accent this thing is that Keaton's doing. I don't know what it is. I always ask, what's your game, Penguin? And I ask that to Michael Keaton because he's got something up his sleeve. He's going to go and get these canisters of this highly volatile substance, and he's going to cause an explosion or some fucking thing. And I feel like, at this point, Keaton should have already been shot because only Andy Garcia was going to have that restraint and not want to shoot him. So it's like, I mean, I'm not buying anything at this point. Everything has just been an insult to my intelligence. And Keaton, he gets around, and I'm not going to I can't really get through the whole plot because honestly, like, at a certain point, I couldn't pay close enough attention. I couldn't do it anymore. It was so fucking bad. But at one point, Keaton, he's still in this hospital, I think, and he is hacking into the computer, and it's like the old standby from like movies in the 90s where they don't think that anyone knows how to, how computers work. So he just hacks this computer and he types in like show all passwords, and it shows everybody's password, and he is able to override the entire system. And it's just like, okay. At one point, Keaton finally does hold this kid hostage, and it was like at the point it finally happened, I was like, I cannot fucking believe that didn't happen sooner than this. Like, I cannot fucking believe it. And it is what it is. I guess, I mean, it was a natural point of progression, but like basically Keaton develops a bit of a soft spot for the kid and develops a bit of a soft spot for Andy Garcia because Andy Garcia is such a dedicated father and all this horse shit. I need to, I made a note to myself while watching this movie. It was basically just, I need to find some kind of balance with these notes because I get really jumpy. I'm like, I don't want to miss anything. But at the same time, it's like, holy shit, I can't fucking write down every little thing that happens. There's all this, obviously there's a bunch of shit that happens with Michael Keaton, and he's, working all this shit out, and eventually they finally fucking capture him. And I mean, it is, I don't even know that it's too long of a movie. It's just nothing about it is good, so it just feels like it's too long. They have this, once they capture him, they have this scene at the end with Keaton, the transplant is successful, and a guard comes to tell Keaton that it all went fine, and the kid's gonna be fine, and Keaton manages to steal this guard's gun, and the movie ends with Keaton holding him up and like asking him what kind of car he drives, which is, it's like a bad, it's not an earned ending, you know what I mean? It doesn't fucking work for me. And the whole plot throughout this entire movie, it's just, everything is just ridiculous. It's like, are we really being this stupid? Is this really how it's happening? And I mean, that's the way I look at it, is it's like, what the fuck is the point of this movie? I'll get on to, I would say, as far as praise, there's not much. They did capture a level of cheesiness in this movie that I never thought possible before. And I think I've been pretty clear about what I'm critical of in this movie. Apparently, Michael Bay was originally supposed to direct this movie, and he dropped out to film The Rock, which, by the way, was the best career decision he could have possibly fucking made, because The Rock is one of the few good Michael Bay movies, and I really like The Rock, IMDb, all I could really find in the trivia section was that they filmed this movie in Pittsburgh despite it being set in San Francisco, and they kind of, took some buildings that were, featured, and I mean, it just, they were made to look like they were in San Francisco, and it's like, yeah, who gives a shit? Like, I don't really care. Runtime of this movie, 100 minutes, budget, $50 million, worldwide gross, $13.8 million. IMDb rating, 6.1. Rotten Tomato critic score, 19%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 37%. Personal rating, 1.5 out of 5 stars. I think that this has too many good actors in it to really hold a grudge against it too much. I will say that I've determined that for these bad movies, I'm going to start looking into the IMDb rating needs to be below like a 5 for me to cover them, I think. I might be wrong. Maybe in the 5s is fine, but definitely not above a 6, because usually those aren't like laughably bad, and that's really what I'm looking for. So moving right on to our next movie, Shadow Conspiracy, released on January 31st, 1997, directed by George P. Cosmatos. He also directed Rambo, First Blood Part 2, Cobra, so both of those are Sylvester Stallone movies, and then Tombstone, which is a fucking great movie, like probably one of my favorite westerns of all time, easily. It's a great fucking movie. The score was done by a guy named Bruce Broughton, and he has multiple award nominations and wins, like a ton of them. He did work on Hawaii Five-0, Gunsmoke, Barnaby Jones. He's just, I mean, the music here, my God, it must just be the movie that's surrounding it, but it's pretty bad. So our lead actor is Charlie Sheen. He plays Bobby Bishop. He was in, it's Charlie Sheen, for fuck's sake. I feel like everybody knows who he is, but I'll say he was in Platoon, Wall Street, Young Guns, which I need to see, The Wraith, The Rookie, The Three Musketeers, which I haven't seen in a dog's age, Major League, 8 Men Out, Hot Shots, Money Talks, Scary Movie 3 through 5, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, 2.5 Men, and Spin City. I mean, he's got a pretty good resume, honestly. And then we've got Linda Hamilton, previously covered on my Terminator/Italian Job episode, where I pointed out that I had not really heard of many other movies by Linda Hamilton. I was wrong. There is one movie I've heard of with her that is called Dante's Peak that I think also has Pierce Brosnan in it. But obviously she was in the Terminator movies. She was in Children of the Corn, which I haven't seen in a long time. She was in something called King Kong Lives, and I really don't know what the fuck that is, but whatever. Then there is Donald Sutherland, who you know from, I covered him in The Italian Job. He plays Jacob Conrad in this movie. If I didn't mention it, Linda Hamilton plays Amanda Givens in this movie. She's a member of the press, basically. So, oh me. Okay, so I sometimes like to put little notes in for myself to look at later and chuckle, and I just had one. So I always try and make sure I have a section for casting notes in case there's anything notable about who was cast for the movie and, who might have been in it if things had gone differently or whatever. So for this one, casting notes, I said multiple people entered into agreements where they said they were okay with having their face shown on screen during this film. It's a big one. Plot synopsis. This was a tough one, and the IMDb one I want to say was like too wordy, so I didn't even fucking go with it. But I said, a man who works on the White House staff is running for his life after he is told by an old friend about a conspiracy to kill the president, I guess. Yeah. Notes. We, the viewer, are to believe that this man realized everyone in the house was being shot. So the beginning sequence is an assassin breaking into this house and killing everybody in the house. And there is a guy who is like cowering in fear, hiding from this guy. And there are 6 cups and saucers with tea or whatever in them. And he takes, you don't know why, but the guy takes a cup and saucer and puts it in a drawer and then flees the house, right? And so, lo and behold, the reason he did that was because, here comes the assassin looking for, whoever else might be in the house. And he counts the fucking cups and is like, I guess I killed everybody. There we go. And so this guy fucking flees, and this guy has, clearly important information and all that stuff. So, I mean, we're to believe he had the wherewithal to think, this guy's going to figure out that I'm gone if I don't get rid of a cup, okay, sure thing. They really want us to know early on, when we first see Charlie Sheen, we want to know he is like this great all-American guy, and he is a fucking amazing hoopster, and he can really, play with all these guys, he's just lighting it up and all this shit, and I'm like, okay. I would say the only way I can really describe the score of this movie that we keep hearing is it's basically it sounds like a rejected score from the movie Air Force One with Harrison Ford. And I noticed that I'm apparently on a Donald Sutherland and Linda Hamilton kick that I wasn't aware of. And I obviously got the culmination of that in this movie. And the guy who plays the president in this movie is none other than Sam Waterston, who is, Jack McCoy, I think is his name, from Law and Order. He's the lawyer, right? Fucking great. I mean, what an awesome pick. Okay, there's something that happens. So Charlie Sheen is on this phone call, and at one point he does a German accent and is really trying to convince somebody on the other end of the line that they're, that he's this German guy or something. And the person on the other end of the phone hangs up, and it does the thing that they do in so many fucking movies with landlines or whatever, where they hang up and then it goes to dial tone immediately. And it's that doesn't happen. That when you are on a landline and somebody on the other end hangs up, it's just dead air. And then if you don't hang up after a really long time, it starts to go to the it's telling you to hang up the phone, but it does not go to dial tone. And I don't think it ever actually goes to dial tone, even a little bit. And I said, oh no, the German accent Charlie Sheen just did was unacceptable, yeah? So I don't know if you think that's a good German accent. This is going to be on my, my audition tapes and stuff. So just so you know, that's my German accent, yeah? I said, oh no, they're at this press conference, and out of nowhere, Linda Hamilton's character decides she needs to ask a question. So the entire fucking press conference stops what they're doing and waits for her to ask the question. And it is absurd. I don't know what it is, but as I see all of these people in this movie, it's all I can think is that everybody in this movie is too good for this movie, and yet they signed on for it. Thus far, it's already been kind of just a slap in the face. It's been this bullshit tense plot, where it's there's a conspiracy afoot, and, people are getting killed to prevent the spread of the fear of, what it might mean and everything. At one point, so the guy from the beginning of the movie, he's running for his life, and we find out he's actually trying to find Charlie Sheen, and he has a chance encounter with Charlie Sheen on this city sidewalk, and it's before I could even type out the note that said this guy's gonna die, he fucking died, but it was so horribly obvious that he was gonna die. And I gotta say, the assassin, the guy that like is the assassin throughout this fucking movie, he looks like a, I don't know, like Vince McMahon if he had like no muscle or anything, like if Vince McMahon didn't look as plastic surgeryed up as Vince McMahon does. And at one point, Charlie Sheen, he's running from this fucking assassin and he drops down from a height that is like death territory. Like it is 100% something that would get him killed if he fell, and he fucking lives. And it's like, God fucking damn it. I don't understand. At one point, this assassin is wearing like a white lab coat, and it doesn't make any logical sense to me. Like, why? And he's got blue jeans on. Like, what are we doing? And then we, at some point, we keep flashing back to Donald Sutherland, and all these White House staffers are talking. And one of them is the principal that is in a bunch of shit. He's the principal in Breakfast Club, and he's in this movie. And, it's like, he's always got to be such a hard ass, so it's like, that's just kind of his shtick. At this point, I said to myself, I'd be willing to bet that Donald Sutherland is the bad guy. Just a hunch, but I'd be willing to bet that he is. And so I gotta say, the assassin, he keeps coming back, and he's not really anybody I recognize from anything, but he just keeps sucking so hard at fucking killing people. And it's kind of like his job, basically. You know what I mean? So that's a problem. I say yet again, Donald has to be the bad guy. And at this point, if Donald is not the bad guy, it's just annoying and irresponsible. And I don't remember this. Honestly, I can't really shed much light on what I meant by this, or what I should say, what I was talking about. But most guys cannot pull off a mustache like that. This guy is definitely most guys. And I feel like there are a lot of reasons that Linda Hamilton is not in a lot of stuff, and they're all on display here. It's just, I don't mean to be a dick, but it's just, she's not that good. You know what I mean? She's not particularly great. If she hadn't been in those Terminator movies, I don't think she would have ever done much with her career at all. And let me be clear, with this movie, as I'm watching it, I keep thinking at every turn, I'm not a killer, but if I were, I could have killed Sheen and Linda Hamilton, because they like basically partner up. Sheen kind of blows her off, like doesn't really want any part of her because she's a member of the press, and then like he has to come to her because there's a conspiracy going on and people are after him, and so he's got to have her help to figure it out. So they go, her and Sheen go, and they want to meet this guy to ask him some questions. And they walk up to the guy, and they're talking to him, and he's not doing anything in the chair. And I'm like, well, he's obviously dead. And they like turn his chair around, and he's dead. And then it's like they're walking out, and the assassin is there. And it's like, why did you let them get that close to the guy you just killed? Why didn't you hide closer and then fucking murder them right away? This is why you're not a good assassin, and you shouldn't get hired again. I mean, everybody in this movie, I gotta say it, everybody on the cast left their A game at home. They did not fucking bring it here. And so Charlie Sheen goes to meet Donald Sutherland at an underpass, and I said, I'll tell you my plans because you are not the bad guy for show. Because obviously, clearly Donald Sutherland is not a bad guy. I don't understand. They meet at this weird monument, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But they go to this park, and it's like this goofy fucking sculpture where it looks like a giant is like clawing to like get free, but he's like buried beneath the earth, and his arms and head are sticking out. It looks wild. Like, what doesn't make sense is they meet at that park, and all you can think to yourself is, why would you stop and be out in the open, vulnerable, when you could easily just get in your vehicle like you're going to do after a few minutes anyway, and just talk while you're in that vehicle and, be on the run? It doesn't make any kind of fucking sense. And I mean, as the movie progresses, it gets more and more obvious, like Donald Sutherland's going to be the bad guy. Like, I had literally no other suspects other than him. because you know somebody else has to be the bad guy. And wouldn't you know it, at this point in the movie, they revealed that Donald Sutherland is in fact the bad guy. What a fucking shocker. So they're like, Sheen and Hamilton are, I don't remember if they're in the White House but they're trying to run, and they know that they're in there, and they set off the silent alarm, and everywhere they're walking, or running around, I should say, they're seeing like flashing red lights everywhere, like all over the fucking place. And I'm like, what the fuck is the point of the silent alarm if it alerts that many fucking people to an alarm being present? You know what I mean? Like, is it just for blind people? Is that what it is? I don't know. And I mean, they're all, I'll be honest with you, they do try and pile on a lot of suspenseful action thriller type things, like there's a scene where, an elevator almost falls on Linda Hamilton. She doesn't fucking react to it really at all. She doesn't scream. She doesn't do shit. And she just fucking deals with it, I guess. She's like, oh, yep, I'm good. And they do that bit that I've talked about before where they're trying to keep somebody on the line to, trace the call. And it's not the way it works. We all know that that's not the way it works, but they want to slap me in the fucking face. And I said at this point that I have shitty thriller bingo, because that's the way it fucking is. So at one point, Sheen is using a tape recorder to record a conversation, and he reaches out, and it looks like he just deliberately drops the cassette tape from the tape recorder in the water that he is near. And it doesn't make any fucking, but it's supposed to be accidental, like he just accidentally dropped the tape and it really fucked him over. And there's a scene where they're being chased on, by a person who's on a motorcycle, and, as they're chasing him, everybody's just advantageously located and facing in the direction of the motorcycle so that they can get out of the way, so that you don't have to see any fucking stunts or anything happen. And they go down, they're running down these steps onto the subway, and Charlie Sheen jumps down onto the tracks. And I always thought that was a really fucking bad thing that you weren't supposed to do, but whatever. The motorcycle is still chasing them down into the subway, and it does not catch up to Charlie Sheen any faster. The motorcyclist might as well have just been on foot, because that's all it's fucking doing. And this is the biggest problem. Okay, so there's a scene where Charlie Sheen has to get into this building, and there's security at the front. There are metal detectors, all sorts of shit. And Linda Hamilton decides she's going to create a diversion and just fucking grab some piece of metal, whatever it is she's got in her hand, and she's just going to keep it on her person, and she's going to walk right up to the fucking metal detectors and try and walk through. And then literally every security guard that is guarding this gate stops guarding the gate to apprehend Linda Hamilton, who has put up very little resistance whatsoever. And it just, I don't get it. So basically when this happens, Charlie Sheen can just run through the metal detector, doesn't fucking matter, and he just keeps going. And at this point, I still can't believe anybody signed up to be in this movie. But when he gets into this place, it's this convention, and it's there is a remote controlled helicopter, like a small helicopter that has guns mounted on it and is wreaking havoc at this fucking convention. And, basically everything's coming down to, Charlie Sheen catching what's going on, catching the bad guys, and, Donald Sutherland's at this convention, and the other accomplices he has are at this convention, and they start dying. And then, of course, Donald Sutherland knows he's going to get caught, so he just fucking offs himself. And I literally tried calling it, but it happened too quickly to type it out to actually say, yeah, he's definitely going to off himself soon. And it did seem a bit throughout this entire movie, the actors were just performing against their wills. They really didn't want to be there, and they were just being forced to. And it finally, the movie finally gets over with, and the whole thing has just been a big fucking slap in the face. I would say the acting was not particularly bad, honestly. It was actually pretty decent acting, and it was shot it kind of looked dated for 1998, 97, whatever the fuck it was. But it was decent. It was not poorly shot. I would say the writing is lazy. It's very predictable. It's a blanket statement that I feel like just lumps all the criticisms I have for this movie into one. It's just everything is the path of least resistance in this movie. It's just whatever's easiest, just do it. So, a little bit of trivia, Charlie Sheen and Linda Hamilton apparently both said in interviews that they were not fans of this movie and they didn't like it, and that, they admitted it was pretty bad. The unusual statue at the park where Sheen and Hamilton meet is called The Awakening, and it depicts a giant embedded in the earth struggling to free himself. And that information, I will tell you right now, is more interesting than watching this movie. Runtime, 103 minutes. Budget, $45 million. Worldwide gross to date, $2.3 million. IMDb rating, 4.9. Rotten Tomato critics score, 3%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 18%. Personal rating, 1 out of 5 stars. I might give it I can always go 0.5 stars, so I guess 0.5 is for the acting not being terrible, but just in general, the plot was terrible. All right, everyone. Well, that was Desperate Measures and Shadow Conspiracy, and those two movies came out in the mid to late 90s. They were both really terrible. If you want to watch them, Shadow Conspiracy is on Hoopla, which is the library one, and then Tubi is where the other one is. What the fuck else? I can't remember these movies' names. Desperate Measures. That one is on Tubi. So if you feel compelled to watch those movies, I suggest against it, but do what you got to do. All right. Well, if you have any ideas for movies, good, bad, new, whatever, let me know. I'm gonna try and figure out what I want to do with this format and how I want to do it. But as of right now, it's the way I'm rolling. So thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate it, and you all have a good day. See you later. Brandon at Random Reviews is performed, written, directed, produced, and edited by Brandon Griffiths. Theme music is performed by Augusto Diniz from Fiverr.